Depression is one of the most misunderstood experiences a person can go through. Many still think of it as simply being sad or going through a rough patch, but those who have lived with it know it's far more complex. It is not a mood that you can snap out of, nor is it a weakness of will. Depression changes how you see the world, how you think, and even how your body functions. The psychology behind it reveals a much deeper story than the surface symptoms people talk about. At its core, depression is a disorder of perception as much as it is a disorder of mood. It alters the lens through which you view everything. Two people can experience the exact same event, a breakup, a failure, a period of uncertainty, and respond completely differently. For one, it's a temporary setback. For someone struggling with depression, it can feel like proof that life is meaningless and that they are fundamentally inadequate. This difference isn't about strength or intelligence, it's about how their brain has been wired and conditioned over time. Psychologists have long studied the patterns of thought that accompany depression. One of the most common is called cognitive distortion, ways of thinking that are biased toward negativity. These include all-or-nothing thinking, overgeneralization, and mental filtering, where you focus only on the negative aspects of a situation while ignoring anything positive. A person might get 95% positive feedback at work, but they will replay the one piece of criticism in their mind until it overshadows everything else. Depression also changes motivation. Many people assume that those with depression simply don't try hard enough to feel better. But neuroscience shows that depression can lower dopamine activity in the brain, which is directly linked to motivation and the ability to experience pleasure. This is why even enjoyable activities can feel dull or exhausting. Telling someone in this state to just get up and do something fun is like telling someone with a broken leg to run a marathon. The machinery that produces joy and drive is malfunctioning, and no amount of empty encouragement can fix that on its own. Another important aspect is that depression often feeds on itself. The lack of energy makes it harder to do the very things that could help, like exercising, socializing, or eating well. This creates a feedback loop. Low energy leads to inactivity, inactivity worsens mood, and a worse mood drains even more energy. Over time, the person can start to withdraw from life entirely, not because they want to, but because the weight of the condition makes every action feel monumental. Statistics make the scale of the problem impossible to ignore. According to the World Health Organization, more than 280 million people worldwide suffer from depression. It's a leading cause of disability, and in severe cases, it can lead to suicide. Every year, over 700,000 people die by suicide, and depression is a major factor in many of those deaths. These numbers aren't just abstract, they represent friends, family members, and colleagues silently carrying an invisible burden. Religion has often failed people when it comes to depression. In many faith communities, depression is framed as a spiritual weakness, a lack of faith, or even punishment from a higher power. People are told to pray more, repent, or trust in divine will, instead of seeking psychological treatment. While prayer or spiritual practices can be comforting for some, they are not a substitute for evidence-based care. In fact, this framing can make depression worse, because it adds guilt and shame. Instead of understanding they have a mental health condition, people start believing they are morally or spiritually broken. That belief isolates them further and delays real recovery. What makes depression particularly cruel is that it attacks your sense of identity. You might remember a time when you were motivated, hopeful, and engaged with life, but depression makes that version of you feel unreachable. It whispers that you will always feel this way, that nothing will ever change. This hopelessness is one of its most dangerous symptoms, because it convinces people to stop trying altogether. Therapy has shown again and again that this hopelessness is a lie. Cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, works by teaching people to recognize and challenge the distorted thinking patterns depression creates. Over time, this can reshape how the brain responds to challenges. Other approaches, like interpersonal therapy, focus on repairing relationships and social support, which can counter the isolation depression thrives on. Biology and psychology are deeply intertwined in depression. Trauma, chronic stress, and unresolved grief can set the stage for it. For some, genetic predisposition makes them more vulnerable, meaning that under the right conditions, their brain chemistry shifts toward depression more easily. This is why two people can go through similar hardships and only one develops long-term depression. Their starting points are different. Understanding this can help replace blame with compassion, both for ourselves and others. Real-life examples make this clear. Consider someone who grew up in a household where expressing emotions was discouraged. As an adult, they might struggle to process feelings in healthy ways, bottling them up until they become overwhelming. When depression hits, they lack the emotional tools to cope, so it lingers and deepens. In another case, a person might have faced repeated job losses, each one reinforcing a belief that they are incompetent. These beliefs become self-fulfilling, not because they're true, but because depression filters every new experience through that same lens of failure. Depression also changes how people relate to time. The past feels full of mistakes or losses, the future feels threatening or pointless, and the present feels empty. This distorted time perspective makes it hard to see a path forward. Small tasks, like paying bills or making a phone call, can feel like climbing a mountain, not because the tasks are objectively hard, but because depression magnifies their difficulty in the mind. One of the most frustrating things for people with depression is hearing others say, "But you have so much to be grateful for." Gratitude is important, but depression isn't about ignoring blessings. It's about the brain's inability to connect emotionally with those blessings. You can know logically that you have good things in your life and still feel numb to them. This emotional disconnection is one of the reasons people in seemingly perfect circumstances can still feel profoundly depressed. Religion tends to respond to this disconnection by telling people to focus on God or count their blessings. While this advice may be well-intentioned, it often misses the point. Depression isn't cured by perspective alone, it requires addressing the underlying psychological and physiological factors. And in many cases, religion discourages people from seeking professional help, framing therapy or medication as unnecessary or even sinful. This keeps countless people trapped in suffering that could be alleviated with the right care. Medication is another important piece of the puzzle for some people. Antidepressants can help rebalance brain chemistry, especially when combined with therapy. They are not a magic fix, they don't teach coping skills or resolve life problems, but they can provide the stability needed to start that deeper work. The stigma around medication, often reinforced by religious or cultural beliefs, prevents many from even considering it. This is tragic, because for some, medication can be life-saving. Social support is equally crucial. Depression thrives in isolation, but reaching out is often the hardest step for someone in its grip. This is where friends and family can make a difference, not by offering quick fixes or motivational speeches, but by showing consistent presence and understanding. A simple message, a shared meal, or just sitting in silence together can be more valuable than any advice. The psychology of depression teaches us that it is not a personal failing. It is a complex interaction between mind, body, and environment. Healing takes time, and it's not a straight path. Some days will feel like progress, others will feel like sliding backward. What matters is persistence, the willingness to keep showing up for yourself, even when it feels pointless. If we remove the stigma, replace shame with understanding, and challenge harmful beliefs that keep people from seeking help, depression becomes something that can be managed and, in many cases, overcome. But that requires rejecting the idea that faith alone is enough, or that suffering is a moral test. It requires treating depression as what it is, a human condition that deserves compassion, science, and support, not judgment. Freedom from depression doesn't always mean it disappears forever. For many, it means learning how to live alongside it, reducing its power over their choices and identity. It means recognizing when the old patterns start to creep in and knowing how to respond. This is the work of reclaiming your mind from the grip of an illness that tries to convince you that nothing will ever change. And once you see that depression's story about you isn't the truth, you begin to write a new one.